Yeah, we'll just get it started because I don't. He could be here anytime or not be here. So,
Okay, sounds good.
yeah, here.
Go away, Baton.
I'm just making sure my soundboard works.
It works.
All right, cool.
It always works.
You have a massive erection.
All right, it's all working. All right, we'll just get it going.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Testing.
Testing.
Testes.
Testes. 1, 2, 3.
I don't know shit about fuck.
Are you fucking Canadian? I like sucking.
Come on, man.
Legit bad podcast.
He has a legit bad.
Welcome to Costco. I love you.
Welcome to Legit Matt. I am Joe. Jen's here with me. Ben might be joining later. We're not sure yet. We have a special guest here tonight, Whitney Fox. Why don't we just start out with you introducing yourself and what you do? Because it's pretty specific, isn't it?
Well, hi, Joe and Jen. Thanks for having me here. I'm Whitney Fox, and specifically, I suppose you could say I'm a medium. However, I am also a consciousness explorer, and maybe even considered a psychonaut, and also an experiencer of some high strangeness through my life. And I guess that's about the most specific I could give you. There's other stuff, but yeah, I'm also an artist.
Well, so I'm already digging the psychonaut part because that means you have partaken in the psychedelics, which I'm a big fan of. Don't do as much anymore because I'm old and I can't handle as much anymore. But what brought you to what you're doing now? Like, how did you find out you could be a medium? Like, how does one find that out?
Yeah. Well, kind of everything that I threw at you with the first sentence is there's a path. There is a path. I think there's a path for everybody. So what I will say is I think in the whole kind of psychedelic community, there's a like a bit of a branching off. So there's a kind of a not new, but more used phrase for what that I do. And that would be partaking in what's called entheogens. So anybody that has not heard that phrase, or if you guys haven't heard that, I don't know what it is. Entheogens are more plant medicines as opposed to maybe acid or, that kind of thing. And also done ceremonially as opposed to like a party drug. So
right, like ayahuasca or the San Pedro cactus or mescaline, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That's right. So the ones that I've partaken in is ayahuasca for sure. Spent a great amount of time working with the shaman, working pretty deeply with that medicine. And then I have tried San Pedro, which is called Wachuma, and ceremonially it's called Wachuma. There's some similarities there, but they're different. And then most recently I sat with in ceremony with Bufo. 5-MeO DMT. So
is that the toad?
It's a toad, and it's deep. It's graduate school level of the entheogens for sure. So interesting experience, not like the others. None of them are, like you could say, mushrooms. There's similarities with ayahuasca, but they're not the same. There's similarities with Bufo and the Wachuma, but they're not the same. So and done ceremonially, if you're familiar with Terrence McKenna, it's kind of all about set and setting, with a shaman or a practitioner. And it's not a party drug, it's more of a deep dive consciousness exploration endeavor. And
right.
Lots of stuff happens there. A lot of healing, a lot of insights, a lot of personal growth, as well as the deeper you go, there's more and more levels, start to understand some things about the world and the the matrix, essentially. So with that said, where'd the mediumship come from? So pretty much all through my life, I've had a series of paranormal experiences, or mystical, or, kind of, you name it. Early on, there was a extended family with poltergeists. So my family witnessed that. That was a sort of a mind opener, mind blower, that, this is all is not what we're told. Especially with a, somewhat, normal family, you know what I mean? So then I had a lifetime of night terrors, and the night terrors were very extreme. And so that took me to places where I had to kind of understand my dream life. And in doing so, I explored things like lucid dreaming and out of body experiences, and have had some success with that, um, with various techniques. And so that all kind of started in my fairly young life. I think I had I was working with OBs more about in my 30s. I had some focus on there. Also, had a very dramatic experience with a boyfriend who was nothing short of haunted. Pretty sure he had a dark passenger, and that dark passenger, had attacked me. And so I'm kind of rushing through all that just to try and get to your first question. And that is, with all of these, like, various exposure to different levels and different avenues of consciousness, like, what's a ghost, or, how did I leave my body, or why did I have I had a series of dreams for 10 years that I really felt were past life dreams about this one particular life before I even knew what that was. So with all of that, I've always been a explorer, whether it was TV shows and books and, workshops, and, all essentially trying to justify my own sanity. Even though a lot of the stuff that happened to me, there was other witnesses. A super dramatic UFO encounter, more than a light in the sky. It was a full-blown encounter with 2 other witnesses. And that was one of my giant paradigm changers. Like, I knew there was weird shit with consciousness, but then that happened, and then I just looked at the world. I was like, we're being lied to, son. There's something else going on. So, so with the mediumship, I'd always here and there had things, weird stuff that would happen, things that you would call after death communication, various things that couldn't have happened or couldn't have known, and messages from past loved ones on my own that would inspire my intuition and feel like they were around. So my professional life, I've been an artist for 25 years, and that art career has been very material, very, very grounded in the material. And then I also had 3 kids. And then, so I had this art business, 3 kids, and then also with 3 kids trying to be a normie, like volunteering in the community and things like that. Like, if you look at my outside life, you'd be like, the people, all those people, like the other baseball moms, like, they had no idea. I had no idea who this person is, and I like it that way. I don't like it separate, because some people, there are some people that would not understand, and I don't want to hurt their feelings by being a weirdo, so I just leave them. Like some of my husband's family, they don't need to know. Some people need to know and don't. Anyway, my kids are grown, beautiful kids, wonderful kids. They're all amazing, like everyone says about their kids, but mine really are. I'm just kidding. Anyway, once they were grown, my son still lives with us. He's 19. All 3 of my kids are not normies by any stretch. So fruit didn't fall far from the tree there. But with that said, when they were small, I was 100% focused on my kids. Like, there was no way I was going to be able to focus on meditation or mediumship, or really, I just kind of, 3, when you got 3 going, it's a lot, and very active people. So I put it all on the back burner, although I was still having encounters with various things. The house they grew up in, I feel like there was something there. We all witnessed stuff. I had most of my OBEs in that house, and then various lucid dreams, because there is a bit of a difference in my mind. Battling the night terror is still there. So even though I did have kids and my waking life was very focused, I had this dream life that was, out there, out of the ordinary, and that was just a part of life. And then as they got a little bit older, I started to read more books about mediumship, and both my parents died, and I had all manners of anomalous experiences with their deaths. So, premonition, and I mean, I could go into, especially the story about my mother passing. It was
Yeah, I would
nothing
love to
short
hear
of,
that. If you want to
okay,
expand on that would be wonderful.
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. How about this? I'll tell you how I just dove into getting trained as a medium, and then I'll come back and talk about that if you want to hear that, because I love the story. I think it's beautiful. But so kids up out. Then I decided that it was time for me to become trained as a medium, because I mean, I don't know why I felt like I needed a certificate. It somehow gave me validation to be able to say, I was trained here, and I'm continuing training with at the Arthur Findlay College in England. So I continue to take courses and keep learning, because it's just like any discipline. The deeper you get, the deeper you can go. You start to explore any topic, and then if it's of interest, you're going to become better and better at it, because you keep pursuing it. So that's where I'm kind of at now, still training, doing readings for people. I do a lot of free readings too, because it's not about the money. I mean, not to sound this way, but I make enough money as an artist. It's more about service, right? So the plant medicines are also a part of it, because I started working with a powerful shaman in 2014, and that blew my third eye just wide open. I mean, then it was like, oh, I thought I knew what was going on, and I had no idea. And when that happens, you can never go back. There's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube. There's no going back to being asleep, So it also enhanced the mediumship, because I have a greater understanding of what the afterlife is, because honestly, I've been there, so you can't help it. You get blasted out of your body, and you have the dissolution of ego, and you come back and you're like, oh boy, this place, and that's my feeling almost every time I come back from a deep journey. As I come back and I go, oh, here, like, what do I do with this place? Because it's so dense, and there's so much bullshit. It's the matrix. And most people that work with those medicines, that word comes up, going back to the matrix. Monday, got to go back to the matrix. And you fall back into your ego, and you do all those things. But in any case, that coupled with a pretty deep meditation practice, a practice vipassana. So briefly, vipassana, to learn Vipassana, it's an ancient art. They say that Gautama Buddha created it 2,500 years ago, and there's retreat centers all over the world. And it's it's a bit of an initiation. You live like a Buddhist monk for 10 days, and intermittent fasting, and very humble lodgings, and you meditate for 11 hours a day, and 10 days of silence, and no eye contact, no phones, no nothing. So that
So
also,
only 10 days though, because that sounds like something I could do for like the rest of my life. That sounds amazing. No eye
that's what
contact, no talking.
it's what
Yeah.
you think. That's what I thought, but you'll get your ass handed to you if you go. Just trust me on that. And then you can go once you've done a 10-day, you can go, let's see, I think there's a whole protocol to it. I think if you've done 10 days, you're invited to come for a 20-day, and then it moves up from there. There's 100-day ones, etc. I've done 3 10-day, and each time was just as hard as the last time, even though I thought it was a big shot, Miss Ayahuasca drinker, I thought, oh, I could do anything. And I got about 3 days in, and I was like, where are my keys? How am I going to get out of this? Because you unpeel like a banana, like all of your psyche comes out, and all of your shit comes up, and all of your shadow work, and you have nowhere to go but to deal with it. And it's just the way the protocol works. It just opens up your subconscious, and it's rough. It's a rough ride. So by day 8 though, you're pretty much in bliss, and you are very, very open psychically. So with, I kind of ran through all of that very quickly, but that is essentially what kind of led to it. A, an interest, and B, some various protocols and techniques to expand my awareness and expand my knowledge about what I believe consciousness is. And really, I honestly feel like I'm still on the bottom floor. I feel like every time I think I know, then a whole nother capsule opens and is like, you don't know shit. Like it's time to, you know, time to keep moving. Like Buddha says, it's like many boats on the river to enlightenment. Then you step from one to the next, and you just keep going. So,
Well,
and
that's been a recurring thing we've heard in this whole community is the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know shit. So you end up coming out the other side going, oh, I don't know shit. Even though I've learned all this stuff, I actually don't know shit. Like I feel like I know less now than when I was 17 and knew fucking everything, you know?
yeah, and so uh, I I tend to think that that's a bit of the trickster element, like that the trickster archetype is sort of like it plays with your psyche to get you to push farther. So I don't know that there is a top or an end. I think there's this cyclical thing, and oftentimes you end up right where you started, but on a slightly higher level. That's just the way I kind of see it. It's like a little bit of the turning of the wheel. In fact, if you ever visit a Vipassana website, their logo is a turning wheel. And so it's a Buddhist tenet also, the wheel of karma and things like that. So, but yeah, I am not surprised that you've sort of come across that sort of idea that the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. But I think that is part of being awake instead of being woke, So I think there's a difference,
The wokesters actually do know everything, though. You know that, right?
They're the most asleep ones, and they just don't know. There is something to having your eyes open where you can't unsee things. It doesn't mean you know everything, and you should
Right.
just be grateful that you can even glimpse it,
Right. And so I think that truly awake people are always looking for the next thing, never saying, I got it. I got it all figured out. Because, spoiler alert, you don't, there's, so I'll just like little side note on that is, I've got friends that know what I do and you totally accept it. And they're great. And sometimes they're just like, wow, you've got an amazing life. And I credit that work a lot to it. Honestly, I do think I have an amazing life. I actually don't feel like I would change anything. However, certain things in personal relationships come up, and when I cry hard, and there's things that I wish weren't that way, and sometimes I'll reflect back on it. I'll be like, oh, the work you've done, and you're still crying this hard over that. But then I realize like we're actually here to have all the feels. We're here to feel deeply, and we learn from those. Everything is medicine, right? So that is part of it. If friends for instance, I have a friend right now, she's going through a rough time. She's got some depression and she's like no money and the whole thing. And like I try and tell her like, do the best you can to actually feel this moment, because you've set it up this way and you're feeling this way for a reason. Now what are you going to do with it? Are you going to be pity pot, or are you going to change it? Are you going to take your medicine like a man and change it and heal? Or, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to sound preachy or anything, but I do believe that everything is medicine. Even, like I mentioned, I have a family issue going on right now. My oldest daughter is thinking of breaking up with her long-term boyfriend, and I love him. He's like my son, and I'm like heartbroken. I can't tell you how many times I've cried in the last couple of days, and it's not me. It's like it's not my problem. I just am a big feeler. So, and I do reflect deeply on my tears about that, because I'm a bigger person for it. I think, I think people that are big softies are big people,
So going back to kind of what you said before about not knowing everything, and the people that are like, oh, I have it all figured out. We've said it a bajillion times on the show. Those are the people that sketch me out the most. If there's somebody that pretends that they know or they have the answer to one thing, that sketches me out instantly. So that's why I don't discount things like flat earth. I don't know where you stand on that. We don't have to get into that. But like the flat earth people, I respect them. I'm like,
totally.
They're questioning the very basis of reality. I stand behind that. I don't know whether it's flat. I don't give a shit. It doesn't really matter. But
It actually doesn't. But right. I mean, other than if we're being
willing
to
to question it is great.
That's actually
Yeah,
their
I
biggest argument is if we're being lied to, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get it. We all know we're already being lied to, so who fucking cares? Let's just live our life. And like what you were
It's
saying though, telling your friend to take that moment that really sucks and make something of it. That's because I believe that every experience here is a lesson. So whatever you do with it is going to shape your life in the future. And it might suck. It might not be an awesome lesson, but I mean, I hated, English in school too, but it was a fucking lesson, whatever.
Totally. You're absolutely right. And, just like kind of bringing my personal thing about my daughter going through this, she's devastated by this, right? And I'm like, no matter what I tell you, you're not going to grow wise by what your mommy told you. You have to live it. You'd have to. As painful, like her heart is, like she's even having an anxiety attack, the whole shebang, and it breaks my heart. But it's those things that make us stronger. This will make her a woman, so and anybody out there that's having the thing is, if you stuff it or drink it away or drug it away or something, unless you have a true chemical imbalance or something, but if it's so anyway, we agree, we're of like minds on that, 100%. And me too, with the Joe, with the like who sketches me out is, and that just screams like a pretty deep insecurity to me, is they'd really need to stake their flag in the sand and say I'm right about something. And we really don't know. Flat Earth, I really have no idea. I've never seen it from. What do I know? Sure. like you said, Jen.
Yeah.
Sure, whatever. Does it matter if I go out and I make a fire outside and have a beer and sit by it? Does it matter?
Exactly.
No, that's why.
It wouldn't change my life. And yeah,
No,
like I said, but
wouldn't.
we already are.
No, that's
It's
why I
happening every
respect
day.
that though, is because they're questioning the very basic thing that people actually are, growing up and brought up and taught to think is true. Like dirt tastes gross. And if I were to go out one day and be like, I'm pretty sure dirt tastes gross, but I'm going to be open to it. Let's eat a handful of dirt. Oh my God, this is amazing. Like that would be crazy. Like, but I would have never known that if I didn't leave my
Right.
mind open enough to
Open
be
your
like, maybe
mind.
that's not true. Maybe dirt's amazing.
So would you
I don't
get
know.
pissed about it and tell other people how amazing
Yeah.
dirt is and stand on the
Yeah.
soapbox and do it? Or would you just eat
No,
it
I would just be
quietly?
like, you would never believe this. I ate a handful of fucking dirt yesterday. I had chicken shit, and it was amazing. It was like a steak. It was
I'd be like, I'll
delicious.
take your word for it. I don't care. I'm gonna have my beer by the fire with Whitney Fox. We're gonna be cool.
And you're not hurting anybody. But like, what do I know? I think I talk to dead people. So, like, I don't want to judge anybody.
You probably do, though. I'm sure that's a real thing. It has to be. There are so many experiences that people have had. For society to discount the fact that people can communicate with the dead is insane to me. Do you think
Well,
all of those people are lying? I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying everyone's telling the truth, but
here in the West, I think it's the strongest. If we were to go down to the Amazon, or even like in England where the Findlay colleges, they see it much differently. Like mediumship is like, it's regulated by law and you have to be certified and you can't just hang a shingle and, like that's how common it is in some place. You go to the Amazon and, you say you're talking to, you want, like I was with some Colombian shamans once, and I was very shocked that to hear my voice, or the shaman I was working with who passed away, his voice among their voices, and they were like, "Yeah, what's the big deal?" I mean, in Spanish, but essentially through the translator, like, yeah, that's just how it's just a Tuesday when that happens. Like there's no why are you so surprised by this? That's how their
I think
culture
that's more
is.
common than you would think in the West. Like we're so sheltered from that kind of a life where I'm listening to an audiobook now about this shaman from Peru, and he has all these crazy stories about casting entities out of people, and like the way he describes it makes me think there's really fucking something to that. Like he's not just talking stories, like he's done crazy amounts of like training and all this stuff, and he can see certain shit. And I believe that. I've seen shit that I don't know what to make of it, but I've seen things where I'm like, I don't know what that is. So I'm just, Western brain going to discount it. What's your favorite, or like what's some prominent stories of either talking to dead people or seeing it like an attachment? Because I'm kind of interested in the attachment thing.
Well, let me first I'll tell you quick. It's a fairly, I mean, I could make it long, but I'll make it quick. A story about an
No, make
attachment
it
that
long. Make it as detailed as
it's
you
okay.
want.
We're not
Yeah.
we're not short on time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's up to you, but don't feel like
Okay.
you
Just
abbreviate
because
it.
you said attachment, and this one was a personal story. When I started drinking ayahuasca, I had a hard time at doing any purging. You know, I don't know if you've ever heard, but there's a purging that happens. You throw up and or diarrhea or something, and it's not just ridding your body of toxins; it's ridding your spirit body. Um, it- I've not spoken to someone that has done the medicine that doesn't believe that thinks that they're throwing up food, because you're not. It comes from your bone, it comes from your. And so the only one time that I did, out of all of the ceremonies I did, I've only had a mouth purge once, and out came this little hairy gray alive thing, and I saw it hit the bottom of my bucket. And of course, this is with my third eye, but with my two eyes as well, hit the bucket. And I was completely shocked. My shaman came over, and he knew that something very serious had just come out of me. And when I laid back down, I had previously been having a conversation with Jesus. So it's ayahuasca. When you're there, it's realer than here. Let's just put it that way. And I essentially said, I was like, Jesus, where'd you go? Like, what the fuck was that? And essentially, I was taken back to a party night back in the, early 90s. And there was, a bunch of people around. It was an after party. There was like, there was lots of alcohol. There was blow. There was ecstasy. It was like just a big party night. And I was shown myself like I was watching a movie, and I had something attached to myself. It came in through the back of my neck, and that's what the medicine showed me it got rid of, that this purge got rid of. And so the, after effects of that, and that was only my second ceremony. So one of the ways that I believe the medicine works is it heals you before it starts to teach you. And so this was one of this big healing night. And the next morning and ever since, like, the colors are brighter, the light is lighter. I'm happier. I suffered from depression for many years, like bouts of depression, I'd say, off and on. That went away. And so was that all just was that really something happening in the spiritual realm? The shamans will tell you absolutely. Or, in the more material realm, was that just something that was drawn out of my subconscious? Maybe I carried guilt for that. Either way, in a lot
I
of
don't
ways, it
think it
doesn't matter.
matters. Yeah, it
Right.
doesn't matter because we talk a lot about the placebo effect, and they're like, "Oh, the placebo effect's fake." Like, but if it works, then who cares? Like when they give
Exactly.
somebody a sugar pill and they're like, "Totally made me feel better." Okay, that was your mind healing itself. Cool. Like,
Right.
does it matter?
Isn't
It was
that
just
a mystery?
created.
Like, yeah,
Yeah,
shouldn't
that's
we
actually
talk about
cool.
that part? Like, that's straight up paranormal. Your mind heals yourself. So that that opened my eyes to attachments. And so I had already previously to working with this shaman, I had already had something that would happen with what I think is my third eye, but I feel like it was my two eyes. Various times in my life, I would meet somebody and I would think their eyes were black. And then, even with blue eyes, I would see this blackness in their, and it would just be a quick glance kind of thing. And maybe this is an intuitive psychic thing, medium thing. I don't know. Um, I, I had this boyfriend. This was previous to any ayahuasca, many years ago. Had this boyfriend, and he was from Costa Rica. He grew up here though, and we started dating after high school. We were really good friends in high school, and we started dating after. And he had a very dark side, and this dark side, unbeknownst to me at the time, is had some gang affiliations. He had some drug dealing he was doing. He had a cache of guns and stuff. But I just thought I was dating my friend from high school. But he had this anyway. It's a little bit of a long story, but the long story short is I was very cavalier about my relationship with him and his haunting. He knew I had already had my UFO encounter at the time. He knew that, and I had told him about the poltergeist situation in my extended family, and so he felt comfortable enough to share that he believed that he was being haunted, and he and his mother were really suffering from this. And I don't know if I was not doing any shamanic work at the time. I was still just exploring, like, what is actually happening? What do I actually believe, or what do I think, or what? And anyway, he thought that I could help. And so I, for sure, was a bit of a reckless youth, like I would go up to Sequoia and jump off 80-foot cliff dives, and I surfed and I skied and I did all these things that were, before kids, I was just I don't know if I was an adrenaline junkie, but if that's what everybody's doing, then I'm going, So, anyway, and I was always like, oh, ghosts. Okay, cool. He's like, can you come to my house? He told me, well, let me back up. When he finally opened up to me, we were at my house and we were in my bedroom and we were sitting on my bed, and he started to disclose that he felt that he was being haunted. And so I was like, okay, tell me more. Cool. And he goes, watch this. And so he looks at my door, which was standing, halfway open, and he stares at my door and it starts to close. And so, I mean, things suddenly just got a little more real, because it's not like the wind did this, it wasn't like open windows and a windy day or anything like that. He was staring at it and he made it close, not all the way, but probably about 6 inches, probably made the door move about 6 inches. And so I'm for sure seen stuff, but I'm way naive. I was probably about 24 at the time. So I was like, I knew some stuff, but I didn't know this stuff at all. And so, and he's, so I just look at him and I'm like, holy shit, dude, like what is going on? Had no idea about that he might have some sort of attachment. So we're dating. We were dating for a little bit of time before that. And he was one of the people that I had noticed a flash of black in his eyes. Yeah. I mean, he did have dark brown eyes, and, so there was that, but this is a little bit different. It's like it's like a shiny black, is how the way I see it. And so anyway, he talks me into, didn't really have to talk me into, I should say, going over to his house one night. And this was, it was right at the start of the Rodney King riots. I live in Los Angeles. So the Rodney King verdict had just come down, and small riots were kind of breaking out here and there. And he lived out in an area, there was some gang stuff. And even though I kind of knew the area, it wasn't necessarily any place that I would go on my own. And so it was really cavalier and really foolish for me to even go into that neighborhood during that time frame. So, but I did it, and I just thought that I was just dumb, young and dumb, right? So anyway, just an interesting part of the story that I think is kind of cool, or interesting to know, not cool, weird, was when we drove in, he said, we got to drive your car in, but I have to have the windows down, and I need to give hand signals to the neighborhood so they know that you're a decent car, that you're not there that you're with me, in other words. So I'm driving into a not that safe neighborhood, and we could hear from the trees. He said that the neighborhood puts people in the trees, girls mostly, and they whistle or they'll make calls depending on who's coming into the neighborhood. So I could hear those calls and whistles being made, and him making hand signals and stuff. So I obviously bit off way more than I could chew. But that said, when this sort of haunting night started to happen, I knew I couldn't leave. I couldn't just get up and leave at 3 a.m. So that was like, I was kind of trapped there. And in my mind, somehow it's all connected, this dark energy in this neighborhood at this time. It was this, I guess you could maybe call it a little bit of a liminal space, because I sort of crossed the Rubicon from thinking I understood something and then having my ass handed to me, and it for sure changed me forever. Anyway, we got food, we got a movie. His mother was there because he lived with his mother. She didn't speak any English. And when I came into the house, it was Everything shiny surface was covered with a black drape. And then she had novena candles, garlic. Like, this woman was obviously mortified. And so um, I'm still thinking, we're going to hear taps on the wall or something. I might see a ghost, or what am I was still, oh, fun, kind of, even though I'm in the middle of the hood, in the middle of a riot. But so the riots were heating up. It was still not safe, because they ended up getting, really bad there, but it was about a day after this. So anyway, got food, got a movie. And I, at the time, I was a bartender. And so I had really late hours. And so I was usually going to sleep by maybe 3 or 4 in the morning and getting up or noon or something. It was not like me to want to go to sleep at 7 at all. Like, I ate and I was just exhausted. Like, all of my gas had been taken out. Like, and so, I mean, it's still light out. And so, it couldn't have been more than 7 in April. It was probably more like 6:30. So anyway, I was like, I fell asleep, closed the whole thing, just laid on his bed and was like asleep. And then woke up, which was way late. He was asleep, and I was, and I woke up to, and I can't remember the exact sequence of events, but the things that happened were, one of the times, and I think it was the first time, woke up to this massive sound, a bang in the wall that was bigger than any possible bang that could ever happen in any wall. And it was so shocking. It was like it was an explosion in my head. So he didn't wake up. I also heard metal hangers hitting together in the closet. And so at this point, I'm actually starting to get scared, because, like, what's in the closet? Something has to be tall enough to be pushing them together. What's going on? But fell back to sleep. I mean, and also thinking, how am I going back to sleep? I'm scared shitless right now. Like, how am I falling back to sleep? Anyway, I did. Another time waking up, there was heavy pressure on my chest, like literally somebody heavy sitting on my chest. I can't breathe. I'm trying to hit him. I'm like starting to freak out. And whatever it was, started speaking Spanish in my other ear, saying something very angry in my ear. So now I'm like peaked adrenaline, hitting him, finally hit him awake, and he's sleeping on his stomach. And then he just raises up and he's like, is it here? Like, he knew. And so now I know what he's talking about. I know that this isn't a joke. This isn't Casper, or it's not, we're going to play with a Ouija board. This was like a full sort of attack. And so then, I'm like, how am I, terrified. And so then a cat jumps up on the night table on my side of the bed, and I'm like, oh my God, your cat's in here. And I'm thinking, in some ways, like, okay, relief, like maybe the cat had something to... Anyway, he goes, I don't have a cat. And so, I'm just like, what? And so he goes over and he grabs a cat and he throws it out the window, and it's like a first floor. So, and it pushes the screen out and closes it. And I'm like, you don't have a cat? Like, what is going on? And so, I'm thinking, where's my keys? I gotta go. There's no way I'm staying here. I don't care if it's a riot and I'm in the hood. Like, I gotta go. But then I fell back to sleep, like, unbelievably. So when I did wake up in the morning, it was way past morning. It was like towards the afternoon. He was shaking me awake, told me he was going to call 911. And, to wake up when I know that, like, I've probably slept for like 20 hours, like way too long. And I got to go. But my head was at the other side of the bed, at the bottom of the bed. And so I was like, how did I get like this? Like, what did you turn me around? Like, did I turn around? Like, I was gone. Right. So anyway, you'd think I'd have broken up with him at that point. I didn't. I brought in some friends. A friend of mine whose parents were her father was kind of a shaman type. Mother was like a psychic. And she pointed out some things in the house, and she went to a closet and said, that there's rocks or something in here. And he was mortified by this, because he had this uncle in Costa Rica that had him bring back just a suitcase full of rocks. And that's where they were kept. And this psychic lady, she said, there's elementals attached to those. And so get rid of the rocks. And then when he kind of realized that she was legit, he's like, well, I have something to show you. And he took us all into his garage, and he had a weight set in a 2-car garage, and he pulled back the weights and pulled back the rug. And there was this very elaborate like pentagram with all of these crazy symbols on it. And he disclosed to us then that that's where the uncle that requested that they bring the rocks back would sacrifice animals for his dark sort of Santeria thing, and I was like, dude, you could have told me. I don't know what I'd have done if I didn't know that.
With that, maybe
You should have led with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, buried lead. There's been animal sacrifices. So here's the other, because I'm fairly conspiratorial minded, and I wouldn't have put it together, or I didn't put it together until much later. So, and this is also creepy. So his mother, so he was the bastard child of a product of a Supreme Court magistrate in Costa Rica and his maid. So his mother is the maid. His father shipped everybody off. The uncle is the dad's brother. So high in the government in Costa Rica. And what's this brother doing all of these sacrifices and dark shit about, So anyway, I put that together later and was also like, this poor boyfriend of mine, I don't think he had a chance. I think that he was essentially born with some dark shit around him. And then he sought out various other dark things. So we dated for a bit longer, and there was one night that his eyes went completely black, and I haven't told this part of the story because it is kind of weird, but he did choke me to almost passing out. And I saw the black eyes, and then he threw a bunch of stuff and around the house. And it was I knew I was going to have to part ways with him, but I felt like I was being, I guess repressed in some way. Cause I also got what I thought was mono. And so my doctor, because I had absolutely no energy, for months, I had to quit one of my jobs. I had 2 jobs at the time. And my doctor was like, well, I think it's mononucleosis, the way your behavior is, but I can't confirm that with the blood tests. So it was like, I would need to nap after I took a shower. I was exhausted. Like I said, I had to quit. So in hindsight, it was when I was dating him. So, I think that this sort of, thing was kind of overtaking me. And then the last real dramatic thing that happened with him was we had gone to San Diego for a long weekend. He was like a club promoter, and he would just have all mad stacks of cash. And so it would be like, where do you want to go? And so we went down there and, had a big weekend and stuff. And I, not to get too gross, but I'm pretty sure I miscarried on that trip. So, because I woke up and it was like a scene out of The Godfather, just blood everywhere. And that was never my style, not to be gross, but I was always really light. You know what I mean? Not that.
You're not going to outgross us. We're pretty gross.
Okay, good. So, that's never been an issue for me. And so the only thing I could think was I didn't know I was pregnant, and there was some sort of miscarriage because it was like a hemorrhage, right? And so, but before I realized that, he had woken me up the night before I woke up with this, and he's like, I think we should leave. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm sleeping. And do we have to? And he's like, yeah, there was something dark in here over your body. And I was like, what okay, let's deal with it tomorrow. And then when I woke up and there was that, I was like, tell me more. And he said there was some dark hooded figure that he could see over me. And so, all of these are definitely chipping away at the relationship. And so when he, I lived with him for a brief time, and I was going to have to move out. And so I woke up one morning, the day that I decided to leave, and my head was at the other end of the bed. And I was like, okay, I've already had a piano fall on my head. Now I need an anvil, the cartoons. When am I going to wake up? This is the where weird kind of really spiritual part comes in. And so because my head was at the bottom of the bed, I could see this really tall palm tree out the window, and I was staring at that palm tree, and I don't know why I just started thinking of Jesus, and I was like, I think Jesus is in that palm tree right now. And so I walked out, and I'm like, I'm
How
out.
many pots were you on at this point? A lot or zero?
Uh, you know, all I don't, you know what, I don't even know what what finally woke me up, because like during that time, like I was not doing any drugs or anything. Like I would have drinks and stuff. I was a bartender, but it was like nothing. There was no, I think I was haunted is what I think. And I learned like what an attachment really looks like. So fast forward, 25 years later to the time where I'm working with a shaman, I get rid of some sort of I had, and then sat through many. I watched. Can you hear me?
Are you there? No, you just cut out for
Yeah,
like
you kind of cut out.
5
I'm
to 10
sorry.
seconds.
Yeah, it was a few seconds.
There you go. You're back.
Yeah, I lost you. I'm sorry. I hope it's not my connection. Funny that it decided to like
Who knows?
go at that time, but I was just
Maybe I know
saying
that's all I was thinking
Just
too.
rewind like 5 to 10 seconds.
okay.
Yeah,
I'll
so
cut
you
it.
said fast forward to when you were working with the shaman, and
Oh, okay. And then I saw that shaman perform nothing short of what would be labeled an exorcism, pulling dark stuff out of people. And very, because I'm not the only witness to those things. Other, friends in those ceremonies and stuff, we would all watch, and we would see stuff being pulled out, you know. Um, in that sound too corny or anything, when essentially the Holy Spirit is entered, you can see it, you can feel it, and you watch these things. It's hard to be skeptical after witnessing things like that. So for sure, what I have done moving forward is my intention, especially with mediumship, is only working with the light. Nothing dark. There's nothing.
Probably a good call.
Yeah, and it's sort of a regular practice to remind the general atmosphere that that's not what I do. Anything dark. I'm not really interested in clearing houses or anything like, because this is all of the work that I do with that is about healing and love and, forgiveness and grace and all of the things that are of the high vibration. So I don't even consider it. When people say, well, you open a door you can't close, I don't even open that door. It's a different door I open, so, but because I've seen, I leave that to the people that seek counsel from powerful shamans and stuff. The work can be done. And so I think I do have a little bit of a theory that addictions are attachments, because of the story I told you about what I spit into my bucket. Like, I think when you open your spirit body up with like heavy drinking or, passing out or, allowing an addiction to take hold, like, I mean, all you got to do is like look at someone that's addicted to meth and they look like they're possessed, and I think there's something to that. I think and I've also seen people give up drugs and alcohol with those medicines. Like, I have not ever sat with iboga, but it's very successful with heroin addicts.
Oh yeah, we had a dude on that like focuses on the iboga thing, and it's pretty insane.
Pretty
People that have
insane.
been drug addicts for years, just one session, and they're like, nope.
That's it. Yeah, it's like the spirit is taken out of their spirit body. There's some real magic that can happen there. So, any state that you're going to go into that you need a body sitter is going to take you to see God. So that, I mean, essentially with the Bufo, that experience that I had, for sure, I feel that I had a near-death experience and I was taken to like the divine creator, and went through a portal and the tunnel and the portal and the whole thing. And my body sitter was like, you know, I think he was there for part of it with me. So these realms are, they're not for the faint of heart, and they're not for the closed-minded to talk about.
Yeah.
You know,
So before we get out of here, though, let's close on something light. Tell us that story in depth. I want to hear that one.
let me tell you about the experience with my mother. So even though it can be a little bit of a long story, because I could continue to elaborate on it, because after she passed, I did find a medium, or the medium found me in this weird kind of spiritual way. How about that? I'll tell you that whole story and how I found the medium. And then, because the experiences with the medium were off the hook. Like, this lady, she changed my complete paradigm with a bunch of other stuff, which would, if I got into that, it would probably be a whole other show, you know. But so when my mom, what happened with her, she'd kind of started to, she was sort of in an era where, martinis and cigarettes were really cool for women to do, like, a lot. And so her body was,
Still are.
she was kind of kind of paying the piper, and so she had started to have some health problems, but I certainly didn't expect her to pass away. But she fell and she broke her hip. And I was living in Los Angeles. She was living in Palm Springs, her and my dad, in Palm Springs. They retired and all that. And I had gotten many calls about, oh, she's gonna get a pacemaker put in, things like that. And I always see her. I loved her. I'd go down there once a month, but I never had this certain feeling, as soon as my dad called and said, your mom's broken her hip, I was like, all of a sudden, I just stopped eating. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think of anything but that. I knew she was going to die from this. I just knew it. And so it was super dumb, and I can't explain it, especially because my body was telling me, like, this body intelligence thing, I just couldn't eat. And so I lost like 9 pounds in a week. I like literally couldn't eat. And I was like, all I could eat was like Tums and stuff, because I just had my solar plexus, my intuition just knew. And so through the course of that week, my girls were little. I didn't have my son yet. And so I had these two, a 1-year-old and an, to an almost 3-year-old. And so I fly down to the desert, take my kids, fly down there with my mom, and it even fell out of my mouth that she's not going to make it. And my sister and my dad got really mad at me. I'm like, I don't know why I said that. I don't know. And so she, they replace her hip, and then she's in this like care facility and stuff. And I had been there for a week, and I had to go deal with some business stuff, get new clothes. My husband had to, go to work and stuff. And so anyway, I went to go leave, and I couldn't leave. And I went back in, and I kept saying goodbye to her. And then finally she said, goodbye. And that she loves me. And I was like, no. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm going home today. I'm coming right back tomorrow. But I just knew, so it took me like an hour to just walk out the door, So anyway, we're on our way home, and my husband's driving, and I look in the rear view, and there's a white hearse behind us, and my husband changes lanes, and the white hearse changes lanes. And then he sees me, and he knows I'm a weirdo, and he's like, stop looking at the hearse. Like, it doesn't mean anything. And it was a white hearse, and like white was her color, like white couches, white hair, white clothes, like she loved white. Right. And I'm just watching this hearse, and like halfway home, it followed us. And so I'm like, okay, all right. And, I'm giving him the side eye, because I'm like, that was a little weird though, don't you think, and so I drop him off at work. And so then it's like middle of the day, and like I said, I've lost all this weight, and I'm so nervous, and I'm like, my hands are shaking. And so I pull up, and my girls are asleep in the back. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to take them in. And they were, nappers or whatever, put them in their beds. And I'm like, what am I going to do to like calm my nerves. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a bath, and then I'm like, I think I'm gonna have some wine because this is ridiculous. Right. So I get a glass of wine, it's probably like 1 p.m, but still doesn't matter. And so I'm in this bathtub and I'm sitting there trying to calm, and it's one of those bathtubs where there's it's like a bathtub shower. And so there was like this window, and I haven't been there in a week. My husband's nobody's been there for a week. I didn't touch anything up by the window, didn't open the window, nothing. There's bottles of shampoo up there. And so I'm like sitting there and I'm like washing my face, and all of a sudden a bottle of shampoo falls from the shelf and hits me in the head. And I'm like, how could that possibly happen? Like, how could that happen? There's no way, like solidly up there for this week while I'm gone. So when that happened, then a shadow goes by the bathroom door because I have it open so I can hear the girls, and not like this tall shadow. And I'm like, and I call it to my husband, even though I know he's in Irvine. There's no way he got there. He had left it. He just couldn't have been there. But I call out to him, and I don't hear anything. And now I'm like, my heart's pounding. I'm like, so much for the wine in the bath. Okay, getting out. And so I get out in a towel, and then I'm starting to go to the bedroom, and I hear what sounds exactly like a bird hitting the window. And so this, I know, if a bird flies into the house, it's an omen, it's a death omen. And so, and I knew it was a bird that hit the window, and I'm like, okay, like I get it, she's going to go. Right. And so the phone rings. I'm still in a towel, and I go and it was a house phone. In the old days we had house phones. And so I pick up the phone, and it's a friend of mine, and a semi-distant friend, like not one I talk to every day. Probably haven't talked to her in 6 months, but an older friend. And she calls to tell me that she's had a miscarriage. And I'm like, oh my God, like, why did you decide to call me? And she goes, I don't know. I felt like I should call you and tell you that I miscarried. And so, and I told her, I'm like, I think my mom's going to die. So we're sitting there crying on the phone together. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And like, love you. Okay. I'll talk to you later, and take care of the whole thing. I go to hang up, and then it rings again, and my hand is still on the phone. And so I'm thinking like, she's still there, whatever. I'm like, hello, and it's not her. It's another somewhat distant friend, like one that I also, maybe 8 months, I haven't talked to her, whatever. And she's like, you know what? I felt like calling you. I've got really good news. And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, I'm pregnant. And I was like, what the actual fuck? Like, what? Why? This is whoa. So then now I'm happy, down. Now I'm happy. And I'm like, I'm so happy for you. And like, and so then I hang up the phone, and I'm like, I got to call my husband. He's not going to believe this. And so, and he was super normie guy, like for sure. Even though he witnessed some stuff, he couldn't help himself to be like, okay, that was weird on a fair amount of occasions. But anyway, I call him and I tell him what just happened. And then he got super quiet on the phone, and he goes, you know what? Maybe your mom is going to pass. This is the first time anybody else admitted it but me, because everyone was just like, no, I know. And so then I had this a bit of sense of relief with that. Like somehow I came back down, and so then I'm doing my menial tasks, my laundry, the girls, the whole thing I'm supposed to do. And I decide I'm going to go to bed early so I can get up and go back down there. But I'm super calm. And then I lay in my bed, and I had a rocking chair next to my bed. And then I'm just laying there, not sleeping. And usually, when you can't sleep, you like toss and turn, and you're like, I can't sleep, and pillow over your head and the whole thing. I was like, just laying there, just peaceful. And then I look at the clock. I'm like, okay, it's like 11 o'clock. And then, okay, it's midnight. And, my husband gets in the bed. He's like, what are you doing awake still? I go, I don't know. I'm sitting. And so then I look at the clock, and it's 1 o'clock, and then 2 o'clock. And then it's like 3 o'clock. And then it's like 3:30, and I'm like, I hear my daughters. We had like a Jack and Jill situation. So there was like a bathroom between us, but there was doors open. I could kind of see them, and I could hear them. And then I hear them both start to kind of stir, and I'm like, oh, and I could feel her there. And then I hear, so my mom had this very special way, like with babies and little kids, how she'd like hush them. She'd like go shh, 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 like that, instead of like shh, it was like 3 little short shh. And I heard that, and I was like, oh my God, so now I'm fully awake. And then like on the side where the rocking chair was, I got chills, just chills in my arm. And so, and I could feel like something, I could feel her there. And then of course the phone rings. And so I'm like, it's going to be my dad. And so my husband wakes up and he's like, oh my God. And so I go to the phone and I pick up the phone, and sure enough, he's like, she's gone. And that's when I lost my shit. I was like, and then like, I don't even know. My husband got me to Palm Springs. I passed out in the mortuary. Like I was just a hot mess, you know? So they find like the poor mortuary people, they had to like help me, get me a cup of tea. I was like, I'm sure they see it all the time. So anyway, I'm done. This is the first big loss in my life. It's my mom, you know, like I could not get my head around it. I lost my shit completely. So we go to their house after, you know, and we get into the house and I'm like this, like I need to hold on to something. I can barely stand. I'm just not doing okay. And anyway, I'm sitting in her house. There's a sliding door and it's open, and a hummingbird comes in the house, and this hummingbird has white feathers on its head. So I've never seen this before. My mother's color's white. You know, there's this white-headed hummingbird, and it comes right up to my face, like within 12 inches. And it's just like, bzz. My sister and my dad are like, holy shit, you know, like what? There's a hummingbird in the house. Like, and my mother, by the way, loved the hummingbirds. Like she loved them. That was like, we'd get, if you got her a mug, get her one with a hummingbird, she'll love it. It was like that. It was like one of her signs, right? So the hummingbird zips back out, and, you know, we're looking at each other going, and I asked my sister, because my sister was living there at the time, I go, a white-headed hummingbird? Like, she goes, I've never seen it before. It was the first day we saw it. So goes, we think of it as a sign. I'm feeling a little bit better. You know, at another point, I believe in the same day, the front door just flew open, and it wasn't windy. Like this was hot Palm Springs, you know, and in September, it was not a windy day, and it just flies open. And my brother was there too. And he goes, Mom's home, you know, like that. And so we're finally getting to a point where like, I can at least try and eat something and deal. So from that point forward though, like, I don't think, like, I had grief sickness. Like I've not really come across somebody that grieved so hard. I don't really know why. I can't explain it. And maybe because my grief was as intense as it was, I feel like she was not going to leave me behind like that. So there was all of these little signs. Like I would ask her for signs. I would say, give me any kind of sign. And so for instance, I kept her purse, you know, and it had pictures of me when I was young and little things like that. I came in to my bedroom early after she passed, and there was a photograph of me on the floor right next to the bed, and my kids couldn't have gotten into it. I asked my husband, did you open the purse? And he's like, no, you know, and I was like, why this picture? And so there was a picture, I turned it over, and it said how old I was on it. And so the reason it was relevant to me later was because later with the medium, she made reference. She goes, your mom's talking about a picture of you when you were about 12 years old. Do you know the one that I'm talking about? I'm like, I mean, mic drop, right? Like the medium was just like, you know, she was an amazing medium. I really learned a lot from her and healed a lot. So anyway, things like that. So then there was another time where I was laying on my bed, like pressing my palms into my eyes because the grief was so insane that it was almost like a migraine in a way. Like light was too bright. I was just so deep. I was deep. And so I just said, I love you. I love you. I love you. Just like that to her, you know? And so I finally got up from this cry session because they were pretty constant. My poor husband, you know. Anyway, I got up from this one and I just felt compelled to go over to this bookshelf. I just walked through the living room and I looked at the bookshelf and I was like, I'm going to pick up that Bible. And it's not like I read the Bible all the time. It was my dad's Bible. And I just picked it up. And when I picked it up, this green piece of paper fell out and hit the carpet. And I pick it up and it's green. And in my mother's writing, it says, I love you. I love you. I love you on it. So was that a precog moment? Did I know it was in that Bible? I didn't remember that being in the Bible. And I just said, like, was this all my psyche doing this? Or was this a message from my mother? Like, so, you know, could it be a projection of my own psyche creating these things? Of course, these things have to be rolled around in your mind, except for so many of the things. Like, if it weren't the shampoo bottle on the head, and if it wasn't the hearse and the hummingbird and all of that. So then another thing that I ended up doing was, I, I had started to get into, because I'd had these experiences, I started sort of researching what is after death communication. So there's books on it, there's websites on it, and I started sort of frequenting this message board that was sort of about that and reading other people's accounts. And I'm like, that's what this is. This is after death communication. Like, yeah, duh, like, of course, like there's a lot of people that believe this is going on. I'm not crazy. And so then with that, that was like, well, you can request stuff. You can say, what you want to see, or request, put a time on the clock and say, give me a sign at 3:00 on Tuesday. And so I sat down one day and I was like, okay, anything, give me a sign. I'll take anything at this point, just because I'm still deep in my grief. Even though I'm having these experiences, I'm still sick with grief. And so I sat there and I was like, okay, well, nothing happened, so I get up and I go in the kitchen, I walk by the microwave, and the microwave, like, it has its series of beeps it does, like, right, just beep or beep beep or whatever, door's still open or something. It goes, murr. It makes a sound that it never made before or never made again. And it only made it when I walked by and I was not using the microwave, and no one had been using the microwave. And so I look at the microwave and I'm like, Mom, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to take that. Nice job. You like manipulate electricity. I'm actually feeling like I'm going to live through this, And so it was around that time that I was like, okay, because now I'm becoming like a junkie for this, because I'm so sick, like, and everything just gives me a tiny bit of hope. So I was like, okay, I'm going to pick a symbol. So I'm like, a white bird. Anywhere there's a white bird, I'm going to think of you, and I'm going to try and make it easy for you. Bring me white birds, and I know it's you, right? I saw white birds everywhere, an actual dove as well on the white dove on the power line outside my house. Like, and then I would see them on billboards, and I would see them on my loaf of bread, and then I would get a piece of mail, and then the return address would have a white bird or what. So could have been my mind too, but also the dove. Like, come on. So anyway. There was a few more things too, but I'll get to the point where I found the medium, right? So at the time I was an artist already, and I was doing a project in this rich lady's house, and it was kind of pre image search stuff. So I needed reference. And so I'd had all these travel brochures because she wanted this like tropical scene. And so I'd had all these tropical things laid out, and which was going forward again when I did reach the medium. The medium, one of the things said, she goes, are you like going to travel or something? Your mom's showing me you with a bunch of travel brochures in front of you, like, and it relevant to this reading. I don't know what that means. And I was like, I know what it means. There was this travel brochure. So anyway, did this job for this lady. And back in the early days of the art career, it was like a lot of feast or famine, and it was mostly famine, right? So I didn't have a lot of money to get a medium, I had never done it before. And so I was like, I had 2 kids, and like, I'm really going to go tell my husband, I'm going to take like, 100 of the dollars that we barely have and go, right. So anyway, I said to myself, previous to this rich lady calling, I was like, if I get a big job, I'm just going to take the money off the top, and I'm not going to feel guilty. Nobody needs to know. I'm just going to do that. And sure enough, that's when the lady called. Right. And so I'm like, damn, $2,000 job. I think I can skim $100 off the top. No. So that was my plan. I go to work for this lady. I'm in her house for like a week, and she is, I didn't tell her that my mother had recently died. She didn't know any of that. But she's very friendly, and she kind of comes in and talks to me about some stuff and getting to know her. And she's a really cool lady. I'm like, right on. And so then she's talking to somebody really close to the bedroom. And I'm like, I almost feel like she wants me to hear this conversation, because this is a huge house. Why is she? And this is more towards the end of the job. Right. And so then she starts talking to somebody about their son passing. And then I hear her say, like, okay, well, talking about mediums and stuff. I'm like, oh, be damned. Like, this is so what? Okay, this is a sink. This is a serious sink here. And then she gets off the phone, and I'm literally packing up my stuff, and presume she's getting my check ready or whatever. And she kind of helped me down because I was downstairs with some stuff, and she's behind me, and she goes, I mean, I'll never forget this. She's behind me, and she goes, Whitney, have you ever talked to a medium? And then I just look up at her, and I'm like, why did you say that? And she goes, I don't know. I'm pretty sensitive. And she goes, I kind of feel like you should talk to a medium. And I'm like, she had no idea that I was taking money from this to talk to a medium. And then she told me, she goes, the person that I was talking to was actually a celebrity you would recognize. And they were talking about a person that lost their child, and that they were speaking to a medium. And she goes, well, if you don't find anybody, let me know. And I go, because I'm actually thinking of that. And I'm like shocked that you knew and all that. And she goes, well, if you need somebody, let me know. I'll refer you. And I was like, okay. And so I get home, and I decide, okay, I'm looking for a medium right now. Right now, as soon as this check clears, like I'm doing this. And so I'm searching internet mediums, blah, 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 blah. And then I get to this one, and it's got this GIF of a white bird, right? And so I'm like, oh, I think I found my girl, And so, but right then, there was a little window above my computer, and there was a blue jay, right? And so my mom's name was Jay, and she loved the blue jays. And so, like, loved all the birds, but like the blue jay, because she was Jay, and it's at my window, and it's not like I got blue jays there, And so I just look up there, and I'm like, bye, click, make the appointment. And so then that's how I made the appointment, and then found this medium who was like, had 3 sessions with her, and she was absolutely incredible. And so her name is Ocala. And so I later looked for Ocala again, and I couldn't find her. And I finally did find her again. She told me that the window had closed for her, and which was really interesting. I don't know if she's back at it. I have searched her here and there, but I think that she maybe had gotten, just a personal thing, I think she had gotten so deep she needed to come back to the material and ground and be here. So anyway, those sessions were completely paradigm changing. I mean, with lessons from my mother, things about my health and all people's health, like some really paradigm changing mind body connection stuff that I would not have necessarily been open to without coming through in that format, and actually proving to myself this like mind body connection, like you said, the placebo, some of that, deep traumas we carry around. And then they manifest physically. And she was telling me that was part of her death. And so that's why it turns into a really big story on that end. So anyway, and then the last weird thing, kind of sad, but also kind of not. Oh, if we're out of time, because there is one last, okay, there's one last little thing that's really, really sweet. So the 1-year anniversary comes of her passing, right? And I'm finally, like, the sun is finally coming out, and it's right on the anniversary day, and my husband's at work, and it's a special day. It's very like symbolic, right? Today, it's been a year without her. And so I call my sister, how's it going? And we're on the phone, and she's like, I know. And mom's been gone by the whole thing. And she's like, oh, she goes, hang on. She goes, I just saw our little Hummer, the little white-headed feathered one. And she goes, it just went down. Like, hang on. And so she goes out, and then she comes back, and she goes, I just found a hummingbird, and it's dead. And I was like, who finds it? First of all, how did it just die while we're on the phone? Second of all, who sees a dead hummingbird? Like, it was right on the, they go off to die somewhere. They don't just die and sit there right on the porch, And so we're tripping, it's like unbelievable.
Most of the ones out here die in my pool, but that's,
Have you found a dead hummingbird before?
Oh yeah.
How many?
Oh, so okay.
What?
But recall that this one showed up the day she died, and it died on the 1-year anniversary, right? And so, like, part of me kind of thinks, was it even a real hummingbird? Like, well, I don't know. So anyway, so that happened, and somehow it's not that I wasn't sad, because I love animals. It's not that I wasn't sad for the hummingbird. I was more tripped out. Like, how could that not be some sort of weird sign? So anyway, so then it gets to be the evening. Husband's working late. My baby daughter, she was asleep already. And I'm like, what can I put on the TV because like I'm super emotional still, and my oldest daughter, she's awake still and super verbal, and but almost 3, and I'm like, well, let's cuddle up and we'll find something on TV. And so I'm flipping it around, and then I come across a show that used to be on called Touched by an Angel. I'd never seen the show. I haven't watched it since, but if you don't remember it or know, it was like this show where these like main characters, they were angels, but then they would like come down the material and be certain people to help people progress in their life or heal or whatever. That's a heartwarming story. I'm like, okay, this is probably appropriate to watch with a 3-year-old. I'm sure it's gonna be great. So in this particular episode, one of the angels was a mural painter, and that's what I was doing at the time. I was primarily murals, and I was like, oh, that's weird, like how random. And then the other angel, her name is Tess, and it's my daughter's name, and she's like, Mommy, your name's Tess too. And I was like, okay, weird. And then the story itself was literally about healing from someone's death, and I was like, oh my God, like, whoa. And so I'm like, my emotions are very close to the surface. And then, so, the show ends, I turn it off, and just me and her kind of sitting in the dark, a candle or something. And then she rolls over onto her back, and she's like looking up into my face. And then she's like, oh, Mommy, listen. And so I was like, what do you hear? And she's like, you can't hear it? And I go, I can't hear anything. What? And she goes, Mommy, it's the angels. They're singing. And I was like, and so I was like, like that's, what are you going to do with that? Like, so I didn't even know she knew what an angel was, maybe from the show, but like angels singing and stuff. So anyway, it literally was like after that 1-year anniversary day, there was such a great deal of closure, and I was able to like breathe again and be able to kind of come back. And after all she did to get through, and then with the medium, like, it's ridiculous. Like, so, answer to your very first question, like what led me to be a medium or want to pursue being a medium, that was a big chapter in that. Because then I was like, she really helped me. Like, that lady helped me through one of the hardest times in my entire life. It was such service to my healing and my sickness of grief and losing, and opened my mind to the absolute reality that our loved ones are really right there. It's just their interference in our life. Like, why doesn't Mom give me the lottery numbers? I don't believe that they can interfere in our fate here, but I do think that they can come through with healing messages. And that's primarily, it seems, they're not only their goal, but their mandate is to bring light here, so we can get back to the business of, our lives here and spreading that, whatever we're here to do that's of the good. Then, if we can heal a little bit from, because we all have, if you have anybody that's passed, we have some unresolved grief and we have to work through it. And so, mediums can help that, and I think it's cool. So, yeah, it's my way of
amazing
being in
what
service.
A story.
Yeah, that's incredible. And good for you for noticing all that stuff, because a lot of people would have brushed that off and been like, whatever, it's coincidence, or not even picked up on those tiny little details that sounds like was talking to you and trying to communicate in a certain way.
Yeah, it could be delusional, but there's always that possibility. But I think that a lot of people do that.
So
They just
there's
don't
too many
about it.
coincidences. Yeah.
And then we all have those friends that are like, oh my God, I saw a butterfly. I think it was my sister or whatever. And the difference is, to the person, it's significant. To the person having the experience, it could be, you could see a butterfly in the morning, but the afternoon butterfly is a significant one. It's your own intuition. And that's why, if anybody ever works with a medium, they really help you inspire your own intuition, because, what the words that they say to you, you connect to. So it's really not a pursuit for a closed-minded person. You have to be open to that everything is connected, and, there are no mistakes, and, we don't know it all. You know, if you think
Right.
you knew it all. So
That's
that's the-
yeah, the synchronicity thing. We've always heard that it's very particular to the person. Like you can be like, this is the craziest shit. I saw this thing at this time, but it only means something to you. So it's
right.
like, but
It's like a
yours is,
dream.
yeah.
Yeah. Like a
But yeah,
dream
before we get out of here, tell everybody where they can get a hold of you if they want a reading or, just to talk
Okay.
to you or connect with you.
Yeah, that sounds great. So my IG is at tricksterfox7, and then I have a website, and it's whitneyfoxmedium.com. So I'd love
Awesome.
to hear from anybody that like wants to give some feedback or tell me I'm crazy or just kidding.
You don't sound crazy to us.
Okay,
We
good.
are right. Yeah, you're right along
I've
our
talked to
wavelength
far
for sure.
crazier people, including myself. So you're good.
We have the same kind of, and we're not mediums by any stretch of the imagination, but we do notice those weird little things and think it means something. I don't know. We talk
You
about a
know,
bunch of weird
that
shit.
let me comment on that because I actually think that we all are. I think it's like it's something a gift that we're all given. We just don't necessarily pursue it because we're not interested in that. So, I think we can all connect. But we've just been told that it's crazy or we can't. I think it's part of our our sixth sense. I think we're here because of that sixth sense, our intuition, and don't turn here or turn there. And then, if our loved ones truly are just the next dimension over and and we allow that, maybe that's part of what we'll evolve to is I kind of have a little theory that we're starting to, the whole next sort of step in consciousness is like they do in the Amazon. Oh, you talk to your dead mother. Well, okay, that's what that it's just like eating a bowl of rice. Like what did mom say? So.
That's so cool.
The new Aeon, the new what are they called? The Age of Aquarius,
Age
which
of Aquarius, yeah, fifth dimension.
that's a whole other show, whether we're in that or not. But dude, thank you so much, Whitney. That was awesome. Those amazing stories. I did not expect that. I'm not saying I wasn't expecting it, but I wasn't. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, good. I'm glad. I've enjoyed this very much. I love your show, by the way. It's great. You guys are awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Well, we appreciate
We're
it.
kind of silly, but
Yeah, kind of silly.
Good
Thank you so
silly.
much. Thanks all listeners, everybody on Rockman. We appreciate you guys, and go check out Whitney's stuff. It's pretty amazing. And we'll catch you next time.